I served the family during the lunch shift. They laughed, called me a loser, and tipped me $12. A month later, I bought the development that destroyed their retirement plans. My name is Ryan. I am 28 years old, and last month I served water to my family while they mocked me in the middle of my lunch shift. That moment, that stupid moment with a name tag on my chest and water pitchers in my hands, that was when everything in me went quiet. Not broken, not defeated, just still. Because something snapped, and it was not anger. It was clarity. They walk in like they own the place. Jake first, then my parents. And some woman I have never seen before. Tall, blonde, probably another curated date to match Jake's social status. Jake sees me first and smirks, not out of joy, not surprise, but because he is about to perform. Loud enough for everyone to hear, he says, "Holy crap. Still working that uniform, huh? Still living the dream, I guess." His voice hits every table around mine. People glance up. They know the tone, the kind of person who loves making others small. I do not move. Just look at them. My mom joins in. She touches my arm like we are in a soap opera and says this is exactly why they took down all my photos. That when friends ask, they say they only have one son. My dad reaches into his wallet and pulls out $70. He tosses it onto the table like I am panhandling. Says maybe this will help me do something with my life. Then he brags that Jake just bought his second house. The woman next to Jake shifts uncomfortably. She asks if I am special needs. Jake laughs, says no, just born a failure. That line is what hits. Not the first insult, not the public shame, but that effortless punch of cruelty, like it is rehearsed, natural, expected. I do not respond. I set the water pitchers down and smile. I ask what they would like to drink. I serve them calmly. No emotion. I take their order. I thank them. I refill glasses. Jake makes comments through the meal. My dad says Jake might be able to get me a job at his firm if I clean up. My mom asks if I am dating anyone, then says maybe it is better I stay single. Less disappointment to spread around. All this while I serve them lunch. They leave a 15% tip, because of course they do. When my shift ends, I sit in my car for a while. Engine off, hands on the wheel, just breathing. My coworker Amber had offered to key Jake's BMW. I smiled at that, first real smile of the day. But what they do not know, what no one knows, is that I am not just a server. Not really. I work at the restaurant 3 days a week because I like it. It keeps me grounded. I like the rhythm. I like the anonymity. But for the other 4 days, I run a real estate investment company. 4 years ago, I passed the real estate licensing exam with no one cheering, no one asking how it went. I used savings from construction jobs to buy my first property, flipped it in 6 months, turned a profit. I reinvested, partnered with a developer named Mitch. He needed someone who understood construction. I understood construction, and I was hungry. I learned market trends, negotiation strategies, financing structures. I studied everything, quietly. I did not tell my family because they had made it clear. My success was not something they could process. Or worse, they would try to take credit for it. Or use it. I kept my head down, built my portfolio. I now own a home in Lakeside Hills, paid cash. No mortgage, my car is a used Honda. Because I care about freedom, not flash. I like having no debt. I like building power slowly. What they also do not know is that Jake's second house, the one he bragged about, sits on a development my company is preparing to acquire. We are about to restructure the area. Assessments are coming. Values are about to shift. His perfect purchase is about to become a liability. Jake's firm, the one he keeps bragging about, has been trying to work with Mitch for months. They have been shut out because of me, my parents. Their retirement portfolio is built around properties in this same regional market. I can crash their nest egg with one phone call. I have not. Not yet. But after today, I stopped pretending I do not exist. I stopped pretending I have not built something they would beg to access if they knew it was real. I call Mitch that night. I tell him I am ready to move forward with the Lakeside acquisition. I also ask him to confirm my attendance at the upcoming industry dinner, the one where Jake's firm is trying to network, the one where I will be sitting with the senior partners, and Jake will be handing out business cards like a desperate intern. 1 month from now, they are going to learn who I am. Not just the son they erased, not the waiter, not the one in the background. They are going to meet the man who owns what they depend on, the one who learned how to hold power without ever raising his voice. This is not revenge, it is recognition, it is boundaries, it is justice. They taught me I was nothing. But I listened, I worked, I waited, and now I am the one writing the next chapter of this family story, and they are not going to like the ending. Growing up, the message was never direct. No one ever came out and said I was less, but it was there, in every decision, every expression, every time Jake failed and was rewarded, while I succeeded quietly and was ignored. Our family wasn't loud about their favoritism. They were consistent. Jake is 2 years older. When he was 14, my parents found a way to get him into Hawthorne Academy, an elite prep school 40 minutes away. Tuition was $17,000 a year. He got in with a partial scholarship, but it only covered 20%. My parents refinanced our house to make up the difference. When I asked if I could take music lessons $100 a month, they told me it wasn't a priority. I remember my mom explaining that we had to invest in where the real potential is. I was 12. I stayed in public school, rode the bus, ate cold lunches. Jake got a used BMW for his 16th birthday. I got a lecture about responsibility and the satisfaction of earning things yourself. He crashed that BMW 6 months later, and my dad covered the repairs without a second thought. When I cracked my phone screen and asked for help replacing it, I was told to start budgeting better. It wasn't always big moments, it was patterns. Jake failed his first economics midterm in college, and my parents hired a private tutor for him. He passed, and they sent a family-wide email celebrating it. I got my real estate license at 24. No one noticed. No one asked. When I turned 20, I moved out. Paid first and last month's rent on a 1-bedroom across town. My dad gave me a plunger. Told me it would be the most useful thing I'd ever own. Not in a teasing way, dead serious. My mom said she hoped I'd find something that worked out for me. The implication was clear. Jake was on a track, I was on a detour. For years, I played the role they assigned. Quiet, reliable, background support. I was the one who came when the water heater broke. I was the one who watched the dog when they went on cruises. When Jake forgot to pick up my mom from her dental surgery appointment, I left work early to drive her home. She never said thank you. Just complained that I didn't bring the right kind of soup. Every Thanksgiving and Christmas was the same. Jake would show up late, take over every conversation, and leave early. I'd arrive on time, help cook, wash the dishes, then be told I didn't really understand the pressure Jake was under. When I asked why I wasn't in any of the new family photos my mom posted online, she said the lighting was bad that day. One winter, I paid the power bill on their house without telling them. It was January. My dad had forgotten to send in the payment, and I found the shutoff notice while dog sitting. I covered the balance $243. The following week, Jake posted on Facebook about how he was grateful for family. My name wasn't mentioned. They never asked how I was doing. Not really. Not once did they ask what my goals were, where I lived, what I wanted from life. But if Jake needed anything help moving someone to talk to about a bad day at work, a favor done behind the scenes, I was expected to show up. And I did. Every time. I told myself that was just how families worked. That some people give more. That maybe I wasn't the kind of person others celebrated, but I could still be useful. There's a dignity in that. Or so I thought. When I bought my first house to flip, it was a small 2-bedroom in a rough part of town. $69,000 purchase price. I renovated it myself. Nights, weekends. I replaced flooring, repaired drywall, painted until my hands cramped, sold it 6 months later for $98,000. After taxes and closing costs, I cleared 17 grand. No one knew. That house was the turning point. It gave me proof, quiet proof, that I could build something, that maybe I wasn't a failure, just invisible. I took that money and did it again and again, until I had enough to form an LLC with my developer contact, Mitch. He believed in data and effort, not family names. Still, through it all, I never said a word to my parents. They didn't ask, and I didn't offer. Why would I? They had made it clear. Jake was the success story. I was the extra, the contrast, the cautionary tale. They liked it that way. Even at the restaurant where I work 3 days a week, I never told them, because I knew what they'd say, that I had found my level, that waiting tables was proof I hadn't lived up to my potential. They didn't know that I'd already bought a home in Lakeside Hills, that I'd paid in full, that I had no mortgage, no debt, and owned stakes in 6 commercial properties across the region. They saw me in a work polo and assumed they had been right all along. I kept my success quiet, not because I was ashamed, but because I was tired. Tired of pretending that if I just did enough, they'd see me. Tired of trying to earn praise from people who had decided I didn't deserve it. Tired of being the reliable one who never got a seat at the table. When they walked into my section at the restaurant that Thursday, I realized something. They didn't expect anything from me, not even dignity. They were comfortable treating me like less because they thought I was less, not even worth the basic courtesy they'd show a stranger. And that was the real break. Not the insult, not the cash on the table, but the realization that they didn't think they were being cruel. They thought they were being honest. So I made a decision. I stopped waiting for them to ask who I was. I would show them instead, on my terms, with quiet, undeniable proof. Not for their approval, not for their applause, but so they'd finally understand. The son they wrote off, the one they said was born a failure, is the one holding the pen now, and the ink is permanent. There's a moment in every person's life when something quietly snaps. It doesn't make a sound. No yelling, no drama, just a shift. Permanent, irreversible. For me, that moment came not with a fight, but with a dinner plate. The Thursday it happened started like any other shift. Midday crowd, routine orders. My apron had a ketchup stain from the table before. I was already behind on table 6 when the host waved me over. "Big party just came in," she said. "Looks like a family thing." I looked up, and there they were, my parents, Jake, and a woman I didn't recognize, all of them sitting at my table. Jake saw me first, his face twisted into a grin that I knew too well. That grin always came before something cruel disguised as casual. He said it loud. "Holy crap, still bussing tables at 28. That's depressing." The woman next to him laughed. He added, "We usually just tell people you're in prison." Easier than explaining the disappointment. My mom didn't flinch, just walked up to me and said in front of a half-full restaurant, "This is why we took down your pictures. It's easier for everyone." My father followed by pulling out his wallet. He laid down $70 like he was feeding a stray dog. "Here, maybe do something with your life," he said. Then casually mentioned that Jake had just bought his second house. I stood there with water pitchers in both hands, stuck between fury and paralysis. Then I smiled, a deep, controlled smile. "Welcome in. I'll be your server tonight." And I took their order as if none of it mattered. They kept talking through the meal. Jake bragged about his car, his office, his deals. My father asked if maybe Jake could put in a good word for me. My mother complimented my ability to carry plates. Their date kept glancing at me like she wasn't sure if this was an intervention or a roast. Nobody said it out loud, but I knew what they were all thinking. I was a failed background character in Jake's perfect story. What they didn't know was that 3 hours earlier, I had been reviewing asset sheets for a development purchase. A struggling residential complex just outside town. The same one where Jake's shiny new second house sat. He bought at peak. The value was already declining, and my company was preparing to acquire the entire block. They didn't know I had been quietly building for years. While they mocked, I learned zoning law. While they ignored me, I studied market cycles. I had closed my third joint venture deal the week before. My net worth had crossed 7 figures 3 months ago. But they weren't interested in who I had become. They still saw who I used to be. That's what hurt. Not the words, not the money. The fact that they had no curiosity left. No interest in my growth. Only in what I could be mocked for. After the meal, they left a 15% tip. My manager asked if I needed a break. My coworker Amber offered to key Jake's BMW. I declined both. Went home, sat on my deck, watched the lake shift under the wind, and made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for space at their table anymore. I was going to build a new table, one they couldn't sit at without my permission. The next morning I called Mitch, told him I was ready to move forward on the lakeside redevelopment. The deal included Jake's house. We had been considering it for 6 months. Mitch had wanted to wait until Q3. I told him the time was now. Not out of spite, out of strategy. The market was softening. Inventory was tight. We could negotiate better terms if we acted quickly. He agreed. That same day, I pulled up the investment account data for our commercial acquisitions. My parents' retirement fund had exposure to 3 of the properties we were restructuring. All legal, all above board. But the outcomes would sting. I spent the weekend drafting documents, NDA templates, investment disclosures, acquisition terms. I built airtight frameworks because I knew what was coming. The moment they found out, they'd try to question my right to make decisions, my ethics, my legitimacy. On Tuesday, my doorbell rang. My parents. They had never seen my house before, still thought I rented a studio on the east side. My dad blinked when I opened the door. "Is this your place?" My mom touched the marble kitchen counter like it might vanish. She asked if I was house-sitting. I said no, this is mine. They walked through the house in silence. My father finally asked if restaurant work paid that well. My mother asked if I was selling drugs. Neither one considered the idea that I could simply be successful. I told them I had investments. My mom asked if I could help them manage their retirement account. My dad asked if I could lend Jake some money. He was apparently cash poor right now. I smiled, said I'd think about it. They left feeling satisfied. They thought the prodigal failure had finally caught a lucky break and would now funnel it back to the rightful heir. That night I RSVP'd to the industry charity dinner. My name would be listed at table 1, next to the CEO of Riverside Development, the mayor, and Jake's senior partners. The next morning, Jake called, first time in years, asked about my house, said he wanted to come see it, asked if I knew anyone at Riverside. He'd been trying to get in touch, needed introductions. I said sure, come over Saturday. He arrived with his BMW polished and ego high, walked into my home and started recalculating. Not out loud, but you could see it in the way he touched the furniture, the way he asked about the art. He asked what I did. I said I had some projects, some contacts, nothing big. Then I dropped it. Riverside had invited me to the dinner, table 1. He asked if I could get him in. I said I'd see what I could do. He smiled like he had just won a lottery. What he didn't know was that his invitation had already been denied. His firm had submitted his name. Riverside declined. I made sure of it. That evening, I finalized the lakeside deal. Jake's development would be purchased, restructured. Existing homeowners would receive assessments. Those who couldn't afford it would be offered buyouts. Jake, based on mortgage data I accessed through public records, wouldn't qualify for refinancing. He'd be forced to sell at a loss or face foreclosure. I drafted the timeline, sent it to Mitch. Everything was in motion, controlled, documented, legal. That Sunday, my mom called, asked if I'd spoken to Jake, said the family needed to stick together, said she was proud of me now. I asked if she remembered telling me at 16 that not everyone was meant to succeed, that some people existed to support others. She paused, said I must have misunderstood. I didn't argue, just let the silence do the work, because now it wasn't about making them understand. It was about making them face what they had created. And I was just getting started. I stop answering my phone. My parents text me every few days with sudden warmth in their tone. Jake sends a LinkedIn request. I ignore it. The same people who wouldn't speak to me in public are now pretending none of it happened. The shift isn't confusing, it's strategy. They've smelled success and assume I'll offer them a piece. But I didn't build this to share. I built it to survive. The morning after Jake's visit, I drive downtown and walk into a building I partly own. The reception desk is empty because I arrive before everyone. Upstairs, Mitch is already in the conference room reviewing our final bid for Oak Ridge Heights. It's the biggest deal we've closed this year, and it's only the beginning. Over the past 4 years, I've moved methodically. After leaving construction, I used $10,000 of saved cash to enroll in a state real estate program. I passed the exam on my second attempt and joined a small brokerage that didn't care about fancy resumes. While other agents chased fast commissions, I focused on fixer-uppers in overlooked neighborhoods, houses no one wanted. I understood the bones. I knew what termite damage looked like behind a new paint job. In year 1, I flipped 2 properties and cleared $32,000 after taxes. Year 2, I partnered with Mitch, who had capital but no construction sense. We flipped 5. Year 3, we launched our LLC and started buying lots, not just homes. Year 4, we were bidding against national developers, quietly. Without a website, no billboards, no press releases, just signed deals and climbing numbers. I drive a used Honda because depreciation isn't a good use of capital. My house has no mortgage. My net worth is liquid enough to fund a 6-month acquisition cycle without loans. I'm not rich by billionaire standards, but I'm unbreakable by middle-class ones. Meanwhile, Jake is making moves that look good on paper but lack long-term thinking. His second house was bought with a 90% loan-to-value ratio. His salary at Westlake doesn't stretch like it used to, especially not with the lease on that BMW. I know because I've seen his title deed. He refinanced with an adjustable rate. Short-term boost, long-term trap. I watch quietly as he posts photos online of brunches, bottle service office selfies with vague captions about grinding. He's trying to manufacture prestige. I'm manufacturing leverage. 3 days before the charity dinner, Mitch and I finalize the Oak Ridge assessments. Jake's property comes in at $87,000, due within 60 days. No exceptions. The HOA will handle collection. We won't have to speak to anyone directly. Just numbers. Just letters. The day of the dinner, I arrive early. The ballroom smells like rented linens and perfume that costs more than my monthly food budget. I don't belong here by background, but I belong here by merit. My name is on the guest list, Table 1, next to people who measure capital in units of land and not hours worked. Jake arrives later, clearly not expecting me. When he sees me, something shifts in his posture. Not confusion, not fear, calculation. He's trying to understand if I'm a threat or an asset. He walks up with a forced smile, asks what I'm doing here. I tell him I was invited by the committee. His eyes drift to my name tag. Table 1, no +1. He doesn't know what to say. I don't offer anything. At dinner, the CEO of Riverside Development stands up and thanks me personally for my role in the Lakeside deal. He uses words like visionary and integrity. Jake tries to interrupt, suggesting we're distant cousins. I correct him. We're brothers. Same parents, same house. The table goes quiet. Richard, one of Jake's senior partners, looks surprised. Jake never mentioned he had a sibling, he says. I smile. That's probably because they only talk about the successful child. Jake tries to laugh it off, says we've drifted apart. I sip my water, say nothing. By dessert, the entire table knows exactly who I am and what I've built. The mayor asks if I'd consider a joint project with the city to revitalize downtown commercial spaces. I say I'm open to it. Jake is quiet, his fork untouched. After dinner, during networking hour, Jake corners me by the bar. He's sweating, but his tone is calm. Too calm. He wants to collaborate, says we could make a great team. I let him talk. When he pauses, I ask if he remembers calling me a failure in front of strangers, if he remembers our parents pretending I didn't exist. He shrugs, says he was joking, that I'm being sensitive. I don't answer. I just turn to greet Tom from Riverside, who approaches at the perfect moment. Tom asks if I've made a final call on Oak Ridge. I tell him yes. The redevelopment is moving forward. Special assessments are being issued this week. Jake goes pale. He stammers, asks what that means. Tom begins explaining the infrastructure overhaul, the assessment amounts, the 80% buyout clause for homeowners who can't pay. Jake looks at me eyes wide, asks if I knew, if I planned this. I say no, the market planned this. I just followed the numbers. He says he can't afford it, that he's already stretched. I nod, suggest maybe he can sell, take the loss, cut his losses. I say it without venom, just facts. That night, my phone buzzes nonstop. My mother says she's having panic attacks. My father says they need to talk. Jake leaves a voicemail that swings from insults to begging in less than a minute. I don't respond, not yet. Instead, I sit on the same deck where I made the first decision. And I realize something. This isn't revenge. This is reality. It's what happens when you treat someone like they're disposable, and then realize they've become the one person who controls the outcome. And the outcome has only just begun. The calls don't stop. They come in waves. My mother crying. My father measured and grim. Jake alternating between outrage and desperation. I let each one go to voicemail. I listen but never answer. This silence is louder than anything I could say. 2 days after the charity dinner, the Oak Ridge assessment notices are delivered. Jake receives his in a standard white envelope. No special treatment, no warning. Just a number typed in bold, 87,000 due within 60 days. Pay or sell. There is no third option. He doesn't call that day. But my mother does. She asks if I've spoken to Jake. I say yes. I leave out the part where he tried to pretend we weren't brothers. She starts reminiscing about birthdays, vacations, all the things they never talked about when they were ashamed of me. She says family should be there for each other, that Jake made mistakes, but he's still my brother. I don't argue. I just listen. My father's call is different. He's not emotional. He's focused, strategic. He asks if there's any way the Oak Ridge development can delay the assessment. He frames it as a business question, but the plea is in his voice. I ask why. He pauses, then admits their retirement fund is down. He says it's tied to properties that are now under review for restructuring. What he doesn't know is that those properties are part of the next phase in my acquisition plan. The fund they trusted is about to lose its safest assets. It's not malicious. It's business. The market doesn't care whose name is on the statements. I don't say yes. I don't say no. I tell him I'll think about it. That's all they ever gave me when I needed help. I hang up. Then I call Mitch. We finalize the press release announcing the acquisition. It goes live the next morning. News spreads fast. Commercial real estate blogs pick it up. Local outlets run a short segment. That afternoon, Jake's firm hosts an emergency internal meeting. The partners need answers. They need access to Riverside. They need to understand how the golden boy of their team failed to mention his direct family tie to one of the region's most influential real estate players. Jake's carefully crafted image fractures. I know because Richard emails me. He wants to meet. Not in an office. Over coffee. Informal. He's not asking for access. He's trying to figure out if Jake is a liability. I keep the meeting short. I tell him Jake's personal life is his business. But I don't hide what happened at the restaurant. Richard listens, nods slowly, says nothing for a moment. Then he thanks me, not for the information, for the honesty, and for not burying Jake when I could have. I leave that cafe and head to the restaurant. My shift starts at noon. Dave, my manager, asks if I want to take a break. I tell him I'm fine. This place still grounds me. Every plate I carry reminds me of where I started, of what I built without anyone clapping for me. Later that night, Jake shows up at my house. He doesn't knock at first, just stands in the driveway staring at the porch light. I step outside. He turns startled, then tries to act like he came here to talk, not beg. He opens with flattery, says he's impressed, that I really built something, that we should sit down and work together. I don't say no. I ask why now, why after years of pretending I didn't exist. He shrugs, says we all make mistakes, that this is water under the bridge. I ask if he remembers what he said at the restaurant. He hesitates, then says I'm being dramatic. I nod. Then I say his assessment is due in 47 days, that the HOA is strict, that if he can't pay, the repurchase offer is on the table, 80 cents on the dollar. He laughs like it's a joke. I don't laugh. I don't blink. Then he changes tactics, says he knows things about Mitch, about past deals, that maybe I should reconsider my position before things get messy. I don't react. I pull out my phone and call Mitch, put him on speaker. I say nothing, just let Jake repeat the threat. Mitch responds like a man who's heard worse. He says Jake should think carefully about his next sentence, because extortion isn't a gray area. It's a felony. Jake's face changes. He backtracks, says it wasn't a threat, just stress, just poor word choice. Mitch hangs up. I tell Jake to leave. He does, slowly. The next morning, Richard puts Jake on probation. Westlake's board is watching. Jake's access to projects is limited. His phone stops ringing. His LinkedIn goes quiet. My mother calls again. Her voice is strained. She says they're worried about Jake, that this stress is affecting his health, that they're not sleeping, that their retirement plans are falling apart. She asks if there's any way I could reduce their risk, or loan them something, just for now. I ask if she remembers telling the woman at the restaurant that they had only one son. She falls silent, then says she didn't mean it, that she was embarrassed, that they didn't understand how much it hurt. I ask if they took down my photos because they needed the wall space. She starts crying, says it was a mistake, that they were trying to focus on Jake's achievements. I ask if they're proud of me now. She says yes. She says she always was. I say, that's not true, and we both know it. The next week, Jake's girlfriend breaks up with him. One of her friends was at the charity dinner. Word got around. The story isn't just local anymore. People know the myth of the golden child is fading. He sells the second house to our company. He has no choice. He takes a $72,000 loss. That debt stays with him. My father emails me, a single sentence, "You made your point." I don't reply. Because this was never about making a point. It was about showing them what they taught me. That worth is measured only when visible. That respect only follows money. That silence doesn't mean weakness. What happens next is up to them. But I am no longer at their mercy. It has been 2 weeks since the last confrontation. The house is quiet. My phone no longer rings. The storm has passed, but what it left behind feels permanent. Jake's house is gone. He took the loss, signed the papers, walked away from a neighborhood he once bragged about. I hear through a former colleague that he is now on performance watch. One more misstep and he's out. His team doesn't trust him. His boss barely looks at him. My parents have not called since, not to argue, not to apologize. I assume they are trying to process everything. Or maybe they are just waiting for another miracle. I do not offer one. Their retirement fund took a real hit. The restructuring stripped value from the core investments they were relying on. 5 more years of work is the new plan. Maybe more if the market continues the way it is heading. I think a lot about that final meeting at the coffee shop. How my mother cried when I asked her what kind of love teaches a child he is unwanted. How my father's face collapsed when I handed him $70 and told him to finally do something with his life. I had no intention of being cruel, but cruelty was the language they understood. Politeness got me silence. Directness got their attention. I replay that day often, not to savor it, but to understand who I became in that moment. I don't hate them. That would be too easy. What I feel now is quieter, detached. It is the same silence they once gave me, and now they must live in it. Yesterday, I ran into my Aunt Karen at the grocery store. She looked surprised. Not because she saw me, but because I was smiling. We talked for a bit. She asked if everything was okay between me and my parents. I gave her a version of the truth. Not the full story, just enough for her to understand. Then she said something that stayed with me. She told me that when we were kids, Jake struggled. Learning difficulties. Specialists. Thousands spent on support, while I, without any help, coasted through school with good grades and zero attention. She said it wasn't right, but that sometimes love gets warped when it feels like effort must be earned. They didn't ignore me because they hated me. They did it because they didn't think I needed them. That hit me harder than I expected, not because it justified anything, but because it gave shape to the emptiness I had always felt. Their silence wasn't random. It was rooted in a belief that needing less meant deserving less, and that more than anything else shaped who I became. I walk out of that store and sit in my car for 10 minutes. No music, no calls, just the quiet again. The kind that doesn't ache anymore. It just exists. Mitch and I had our regular meeting this morning. I told him I wanted to step back from aggressive acquisitions. The Riverside project is finished. I sold my stake last week. Not because of Jake. It was a smart exit. The value was at its peak. I want to reinvest elsewhere. Maybe something slower. Something with community impact. The restaurant I work at offered me a silent partnership. I haven't decided yet, but the idea of building something stable and simple appeals to me now. I haven't blocked my family, but I haven't reached out either. Some days I consider answering one of my mother's long texts. Other days I think about deleting them all. But I don't. I let them sit. Like unopened mail from a place I used to live. There are still moments where I ask myself if I went too far. If the lesson I delivered cost more than it should have. But then I remember every Christmas I spent in silence. Every birthday ignored. Every dinner where my name was left out of conversation. And I know this wasn't revenge. It was clarity. A line drawn where the fog used to be. Jake will recover. He is still sharp, still driven. But now he knows the ceiling of what charm can do when truth walks into the room. My parents will adjust. They have each other. They always did. As for me, I am no longer seeking applause. I have built a life I respect, not for the money, not for the power, but for the fact that I built it in silence. With no handouts, no validation, just quiet resolve. If they call again, maybe one day I will answer. Maybe we'll meet somewhere neutral. No shouting, no crying, just facts and new terms. But they will have to come to me now, with respect, not expectation. What I want readers to take from this isn't that vengeance is satisfying, because it isn't. Not in the way people think. What's satisfying is no longer needing approval, no longer aching for recognition from people who only saw your limits. If you are the quiet one in your family, the one always underestimated, let me tell you something. You don't have to prove them wrong. You just have to prove yourself right. And when you do, let your success speak in a language they never taught you. Dignity, boundaries, control. Thank you for reading. If you've ever experienced something like this, share it in the comments. You are not alone, and you are not weak for walking away. Sometimes the strongest move is leaving the table.